So hello, everyone. Welcome to today's discussion on the opportunities and obstacles that come with fleet electrification. My name is Sarah Hood. I am from Propulsion Quebec. We are the Quebec Industrial Cluster on Electric and Smart Transportation. So our mission is to accelerate the development of our industry. And today I will be moderating the session. I'd like to take a moment to thank Flo for having me and to remind our audience that today's session is being recorded for future use, and it will be available on Flo's YouTube channel in the coming weeks. So if you'd like to see it again and share it with some other people, it will be available on Flo's YouTube channel. Also, I'd like to note that our attendees today are muted so that our speakers are not interrupted. However, if you would like to ask questions, there will be a Q&A period at the end, and you can use at any time the Q&A function, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can should time allow it. So, as the number of light and medium-duty electric vehicles models continues to rise, questions about when and how to electrify a fleet have become more prominent across the EV charging industry. Increasingly favorable economic conditions, including larger and cheaper batteries, robust government incentive programs, and advances in charging technology have led many commercial fleet managers to begin the process of electrification as a way to usher in a more sustainable future for all. Today, our panel of esteemed guests is going to discuss fleet electrification, from how to begin a pilot project to what technology might be involved in the process. So to kick things off, I'm going to invite each of our panelists to introduce themselves and their organization. And I would like to start with Stéphane Labrec from Videotron.
Thank you, Sarah. As a fleet director for Videotron, a branch of Québécois, Videotron managed 1,200 units, and including around 900 vehicles. So I will explain later on my role at as a director.
Mm-hmm. And Videotron is one of the largest telecom companies in Quebec, and is also part of a bigger holding, Québécois, as you mentioned. So it's one of the branch that is looking to electrify the fleet in the near future.
Yeah, and it's as a branch of Québécois, we manage around 90% of the vehicles of Québécois. So we are the biggest branch of Québécois. That's right.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Stéphane, for being here. Now let's move to Christopher Rowell from Lion Electric.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Sarah just said, I'm Christopher. I am the lead energy specialist over at the Lion Electric company. Lion is probably one of Canada's largest manufacturers of heavy-duty transportation, entirely electric. We manufacture class 5, 6, 7, and 8 trucks, school buses, and shuttle buses. We also have the Lion Energy division, of which I am a part, that does clé en main, turnkey energy infrastructure solutions, including battery storage, solar, wind, and all manners of electric vehicle charging.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christopher. And now Sylvain Bouffard from Flo.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sylvain Bouffard. I'm Director of Communications and Public Affairs at Flo. Flo is, first of all, an operator of EV charging network, which is called Flo, which is present in Canada and now in the US as well. We're also a developer of software for EV charging and a manufacturer of charging stations. Our plant is based in Quebec, in the city of Shawinigan, and over there we've produced now over 35,000 stations for residential, commercial, workplace, public infrastructure, and obviously for fleets as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sylvain. So we have a We will have a very interesting discussion on fleet electrification. We have an operator, a large fleet operator, a manufacturer of vehicle, and manufacturer of charging infrastructure. So I think we have it all to really answer all of your questions and really contribute to helping other fleet operators to do the move. So let's jump into our Q&A. Can you just first, just as at a more macro level, share with us your role in fleet electrification? Where do you and your organization fit into this equation? We'll start with Stéphane.
As a fleet director, my main role in the fleet electrification, it was to establish a plan, first of all, and to present it to our president, Mr. Pelado, who you might know him, and to make sure that the plan was a most efficient one so it can be approved for Quebecor. And now it's to ensure that it's going to be executed as planned and maybe adjust as needed in the future, because we're just starting our plan. So I think for the few years to come, we might have to adjust it for sure, just regarding the new technology on the charging station and vehicles also. So that's about my main role at this point.
Excellent. And you, Christopher?
So as the energy specialist over at Lion Electric, my role is to guide customers as they electrify their fleet. Firstly, by determining what infrastructure requirements they need, and then helping them pick an energy solution that is right for their vehicle. They need to understand that electrification is more than simply swapping from a diesel truck to a gasoline-powered truck. Stefan can certainly speak to that point. They also need to understand that this is not merely a fleet decision. There will be implications on buildings, implications on their electricity bill, implication on their total utility structure. And I exist to give them a full picture, because there are multiple benefits to electric that a lot of people simply don't consider in a business case. So we do everything from talking about the carbon savings, the greenhouse gas emissions reduction, the health benefits, the health savings, as well as the electricity consumption, electricity demand, and how to manage those utility expenses, as well as comparing and contrasting them to fossil fuels, showing how much more expensive it is to operate a fossil fuel fleet than an electric fleet. And then moving them into an infrastructure decision that is right-sized and optimum for their product and for the fleet solution that they're picking. So we cover really the end-to-end of giving them a vehicle and giving them the infrastructure to power and utilize that vehicle. And Lion operates a staff that manages that process from end to end, including supporting the vehicle.
It's really a turnkey solution, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and Sylvain, what about you?
Well, our role at Flow is really being, I'd say, we're obviously the connecting point between the electric vehicles that are part of the fleet and also the energy provider. And in fact, obviously, we do this with the charging stations that we have to offer. We have a complete suite of level 2 stations and also level 3s. But you know, looking at the charging stations doesn't tell the whole story, because you need to also take care of how you feed the energy to those vehicles. And our software solutions that enable smart power management is also a key component of our offering for fleets. So not only do we connect vehicle, but we make sure that the energy that is consumed is done in the most efficient way, both from an energy perspective and from a cost perspective. We also, since we're at the core of the relationship between EVs and the energy provider, we work in an integrated way with other partners. You know, if there are telemetry that is involved, we can also integrate that and have systems that can talk to each other as well to facilitate the management of the fleet.
Excellent. Okay, so everyone here has a role to play. We have a firmer sense of everyone fits in that equation. So maybe we should start by asking a very basic question. Why, according to you, should we go with fleet electrification? What is it about this process that seems most promising to you? And what are the economic and environmental benefits that our audience should be aware of? What are the obstacles, the challenges that might make themselves apparent to those looking to electrify a fleet in the immediate future? Let's start with you, Christopher, and then we could move on to Stéphane and Sylvain.
Certainly. I think why electrification needs to be prefaced with the question, why now? And the answer is because there has never been a better time to electrify except for yesterday. The health benefits behind this are immeasurable from a governmental perspective, from a societal perspective. Toronto Public Health, in conjunction with Hamilton Public Health and the University of Toronto, one of my alma mater, recently published a study on this topic saying that if we were to electrify all vehicles in this corridor, Canada's largest city, we would be saving hundreds of lives annually, as well as billions of dollars from our healthcare bills. It also happens to help that a lot of these highways run through low-income, high-density areas. We'd be helping out the most disadvantaged people in our community by switching to electric vehicles. But that's only at the governmental perspective. The environmental perspective for socially conscious companies like Québécois Videotron is, I want to say unquantifiable. However, it is absolutely quantifiable. 1 liter of diesel produces about 2.6, 2.7 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent, whereas 1 kilowatt hour of electricity on the Quebec grid is about 1 gram of CO2 equivalent. You're looking at a 99% reduction in Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions. It is night and day difference in air quality and environmental benefit. Not to mention that electric vehicles happen to be cheaper to operate. They may have a higher capital cost, but over the long-term duration, you are not paying for fuel. You are not paying for maintenance on multiple parts. There's really only 1 or 2 moving parts in a vehicle. So when you take all of that together and you bundle that into an economic, environmental, and social equation, the benefits of electric are almost infinite relative to their fossil fuel counterparts. Which brings me back to the original point. It's not why should you move to electric, it's when, and the answer is now.
Okay, thank you. Stéphane, maybe you can answer or insist a little bit more on the obstacles and challenges and explain a little bit why in your case you've decided to make the move now.
Yeah, now, as Christopher mentioned, I know that it's not the vehicle that costs, that is the main cost that we have. It's more about the infrastructure that we have to engage. So, is an electrical project as ours is without financial assistance, like we just announced Tuesday, is it feasible? The answer is no at this point. So we do need some aids from the government to do our infrastructure, because it's the most expensive part of our plan to integrate all of fleet in at this point right now. So yeah, to put a plan in place, whether it's for a question of image, environment, or economic, the management of your company must be favorable to this change. And Christopher just said it. It's not the economic way; it's the environmental way that you're gonna benefit at this point. So we think that reducing our GHG emission will be more efficient right now than the economic way for the moment. So maybe in the past years, in a few years ago, the infrastructure will be less expensive, but at this point, yeah. And also, I think the most challenging point at the for a project is to experience a fully electric plan or fleet, because it's not in buying a few vehicles here and there. For us in Videotron, we have multiple locations, and it's not in buying a few vehicles here and there with charging station that we're gonna live a fully electric vehicle. So that's why we did our plan to electrify 100% location to experience as a operational fleet on daily basis with our employees. So that is the most challenging point for now for us.
Okay, it's a big project. In your case, it's a major turnover. So you might see in the long run, or in after a few years of operations, some of the benefits. I see. Sylvain.
Yes. So why consider fleet electrification now? Chris has offered a lot of arguments, which I will not cover. But I will say that you know, the economic benefits associated with the conversion to an electrified fleet will materialize over the long term. Because, you know, as everyone said, there are capital costs that are upfront, but over time, operational costs will go down. There are, you know, very substantial energy savings to be made, and a smart investment in the infrastructure will make this a long-term, will create long-term value, because that infrastructure will be able to support vehicles in the long run. So if you want to achieve those savings and access those savings, you better start now, because it's a long-term process. There was a study that was released actually this week in a very timely way by Geotab and the conclusion was that looking at current utilization of vehicles by gas-powered fleets, about 60% of them would already be in a situation where converting today would give them access to savings in their operating costs. So in fact, one reason to do it now is actually do it before your competitor does. Is probably one of the arguments that I would put forward today.
Mm-hmm. And probably what happened, also what was involved in the decision-making process of Videotron and Québécois. Okay, so we have seen why we should go electric now, but I'd like for us to talk about how one would go about that process. Often in the EV charging industry, we hear about the value of a pilot program for a charging station. A pilot project lets a client evaluate the validity of a proposed charging solution in a controlled environment before progressing with the remainder of the solution. Sylvain, what do we need to know about the value of a pilot program from your perspective? And Stéphane, we would really like to know if you went through if you used a pilot program when you began your process of electrifying the Videotron fleet. So Sylvain, you go first.
Yes, well, for sure, we definitely are all in favor of doing pilot programs for different type of applications, and that obviously applies to fleets as well. Operating a fleet that runs on electricity is a completely different ballgame compared to a gas-powered vehicles, and that means that there is a lot of learnings to be made. A lot of discovery. There are some elements that can be counterintuitive. The slower you can charge, the more cost-effective it can be, because it saves you excess demand charge, for example. So what's something that might have been seen as waste, your vehicle downtime suddenly becomes a source of value creation, because you can actually charge in a slower way, and that will generate savings in terms of the energy that you consume. So because of this new paradigm, new way of thinking. A pilot will make it possible for you to make those learnings to see how it applies for your fleet. One example is assessing in real life what's the actual range of vehicles that you need. If in fact your vehicle has cover 150 kilometers per day instead of 350, well, maybe you can then buy cheaper vehicles with smaller batteries. That's a very tangible way that you can create savings, but making sure that you're comfortable doing so, that you don't have range anxiety at fleet level is not something that you want to live. So these are some of the things that a pilot will help you out, figure out what are the total costs of ownerships over time, and this is where we can help our clients figure things out, and do so in a way where at least the infrastructure that will be installed today will ensure that it stays relevant as the fleet grows afterwards. So you can make investments today that will be compatible and in fact will still have value for the long run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Stéphane, did you go through a pilot program before you went on with the major project?
Actually, we are just finishing building our plan in one location. It's in Frontenac in Montreal, and yes, we did use Ivy from to work together to build a project in our plan to make sure that what we're gonna do, it's gonna be the good thing. But we have to experience, as I said, a fully fleet electrify. So in that case, I never saw before a company who has 100% fleet in vehicles. So we have to experience as a fleet operator, but also with our employees who are using those vehicles. And as Sylvain just said, in our case, yeah, it's the costs and the life cycle costs, and also, but if what's happened if our vehicles are not fully charged for the next day? So it's everything that must be together, to work together to make a fully good project for us. So in order to fully experience, as I said, in Frontenac, for example, we installed 10 charging station, level 1 charging station, over 40 level 2 charging station, a level 3 charging station, a 160 kilowatts generator. And for this project, I know that it's for one vehicle for one charging station. So we will experience everything on this smarter project. Then for in the future, we will see if we need to have a smaller vehicle with a smaller battery, or even someone behind you, sorry. Or even maybe one vehicle or two vehicle or three vehicle per charging station. So it might be we will experience that. And that's the thing that, on paper, it's easy to say, okay, we might need a smaller vehicle or a few charging stations, but in reality, it's different, and we have to experience it. We know in 2008, with the high storm that we had, it might be very different today if we have this kind of problem and we don't have any gas vehicles. So we have to experience it once and for all to make sure that we're gonna do the right things, and we're gonna decide whatever it's the good things to do. But from now, yeah, that's about those planned and project that we managed to do with the IV last year. So in February at the end, we're gonna start our project in Frontenac, and we'll see what's gonna happen. And that's gonna be quite a challenge for my team as an operate fleet, but also for our customer.
Okay.
So,
And Christopher, what does Lion recommend to its client as it pertains to pilot program? Do you, as a manufacturer, as a supplier, do you advocate for pilot as well?
It honestly depends on the customer. And I want to take a step back from Lion and take a look at the market more broadly and point that out to the participants here. There are a wide variety of pilot projects out there right now that are happening in the academic. I mean, to talk about, since we are a heavy duty manufacturer, is to talk about the delivery sphere. There's a pilot project currently being run right now by Jalon in the city of Montreal, where Purolator is probably the largest participant. They're running electric vehicles across full spectrum of delivery. They're doing class 6 delivery vehicles, which are very large delivery trucks, all the way down to electric cargo bikes. And this is the type of pilot project that is going to inform the decision making of companies for years to come. So does your company need a pilot project? Well, that depends. If somebody else has already done it and they're doing it well, you need to step up to where your competitors are. And I'll use some specific examples here. Sticking purely in the delivery sense, Amazon's buying hundreds of thousands of electric vehicles. They obviously see a business case and it's working for them. FedEx is buying hundreds of thousands of electric vehicles, or however many electric vehicles they're buying. So is UPS. This is a tried and tested method, and they are operating on that model. It's the same thing if you're operating a commercial fleet of vehicles that are doing VIP duties, or anything where there is a tested and clear business case that somebody else has done. You might not necessarily need to do your own pilot. Where I will recommend a pilot for you is on the infrastructure side. And that is because, as both Stéphane and Sylvain alluded to, there is a massive gap in knowledge between the application of an electric vehicle and the utilization of an electric vehicle. Sylvain can probably speak for hours on this topic, coming from an electric vehicle charging manufacturer. But Stéphane brought it up very, very poignantly. And that is there a 1-to-1 relationship with the charger? Is there a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1? And most importantly, how are those chargers being used when you are rolling your operations out? Is it being done in a 24/7? Are you allowing these vehicles to charge overnight? And if you do, all of that information is going to be stored in that corporate knowledge base and repository and be used to inform decision making going forward. I do see a question, though, that I do want to answer from Jim Pegg at Invari Energy in Ottawa. Are we seeing organizations sharing their lessons learned from pilots? And again, that very much depends on the organization. Some pilot projects are run by municipalities or run as part of a government program. And that information, especially in the California and Quebec jurisdictions, is typically public. If it is a private sector organization running their own pilot project, or it's being run in conjunction with an OEM or a manufacturer, that information would almost assuredly be private.
We'll be grateful to exchange our good and worse things that we did. I don't who wrote that. Jim Pegg. So yeah, just reach me, Jim, and I'll be pleased to share all those.
Excellent. There we go. There's a good outcome, a very concrete outcome coming out of this webinar already. Excellent. Okay, so we have a few people on the panel who are involved in facilitating the transition to an electric fleet, not just operators. Sylvain, what does that flow have to say about the technology that underscores the fleet charging solution? What, in your opinion, does a fleet charging station look like, and how might it differ from a workplace or a public solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first of all, it all depends what kind of fleet that you have. a good infrastructure will be aligned with the needs of the fleets and based on the types of vehicles that you have. So in our offering, we'll have charging stations that are pretty similar and that it can be used for other types of use cases. So level 2 chargers that can be used, for example, for workplace charging. Or DC fast charging that you could see, for example, on public networks. What is new and stands kind of in between is a brand new charger that we're bringing now to the market, which is called the Core Plus Max. So the Core Plus Max is a level 2 charger, but at 80 amps and not 30 amps like a regular level 2 charger. And that means that the maximum power output stands at 19.2 kilowatt, which is actually not very far from a DC charger that of 25 kilowatt, but will have a cost associated with it that is represent only 30% of the cost of a DC charger of 25 kilowatt. This particular charger, the Core Plus Max, is particularly well aligned to support medium duty vehicles like delivery trucks, school buses, for example, which is one where there was a gap in the offering. So we're coming to the market with a solution, and we know that these medium duty vehicle are very often at the core of some of the fleets. So we're excited about that. Just to give you an example, it kind of makes it possible to do the slow charge of a level 2 that is cost efficient overnight for a vehicle that has a very big battery. So let's say you have a Lion school bus with a 210 kilowatt hour battery. You can charge it overnight and it will have its 250 kilometers of autonomy for the following day. And because the cost of the Core Plus Max is actually much lower than a DC, you can also consider installing a station like that at your driver's house. There are fleets where the drivers will take the vehicle home at night. So this is something that is compatible with a home installation versus a DC fast charger would have been the typical option. Mm-hmm. Another thing I want to say about the solutions for fleet is definitely the software part. It's really important if you really want to achieve those cost saving to have software solutions that will ensure that you don't exceed the load that is being allowed to you. So you don't want to incur any excess demand charge, because that can really drive up your energy costs. So we have a software solution that is called power limiting that will prevent that. We have also another solution that's really helpful, which is called power sharing. Will ensure that you can charge all at once a large number of vehicles. So that is also really, really precious and can also reduce the cost of your overall electrical installation.
Excellent. And Christopher, from your perspective, what do we need to know about the vehicles themselves? What kind of charging solution is optimal for the vehicles produced by Lion?
So this is why we have an in-house team of energy specialists. And the answer is, there is no one charger that does it all for every type of vehicle. I think Flow will tell you that as well. It's why they produce a dozen different models of charger. We're seeing right now an absolute plethora of chargers that we utilize across all market segments. And that really depends on the composition of the electric vehicle itself. If you own a Nissan Leaf versus a Hyundai Ioniq, which I am guilty of owning, you're already looking at a difference between CHAdeMO, charge to move, versus an SAE CCS1 or J1772 charger type. Right there, you're looking at two different types of charger, and that's in the consumer class. Likewise, on DC, you're looking at Tesla, CHAdeMO adapters, you're looking at SAE Combo CCS1. As you move into heavy duty, you start looking at technological limitations that affect buses and trucks. And what I mean by that is, either the vehicle is going to come with an AC inverter on board or a type of charger on board, or it's not. If it does not have an onboard charger, it cannot take AC charging, which means you are required to have a DC option. And that's something that you should be made aware of. It might limit you from taking Flow's brand new, awesome 19.2 kW charger that Sylvain just explained is 30% cheaper than a DC charger. You might not be able to use that. Likewise, if you have a very, very high amount of kilowatt hours or high energy density in your battery composition on your vehicle, if you have 720 kilowatt hours of battery, which many heavy duty buses and trucks do, it will take you 37.5 hours to charge on a 19.2 kilowatt charger, which means you'll need a high powered DC charger, 50 or 100 or 150 kilowatts. Likewise, the main considerations that I would talk about are voltage infrastructure. Can your charger take the vehicle's infrastructure, or can your vehicle actually be supported by that charger? Many heavy duty vehicles operate at an 800 volt architecture. Many chargers on the market stop at 500. And lastly, how are you going to use your vehicle? And Sylvain brought this up, and it's the perfect example. Overnight charging versus opportunity charging. If you have a 24/7 delivery operation where you do most of your construction deliveries or whatever between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. and you only have 4 hours of a 4-hour window to charge, you cannot slow charge. You require a fast charger. Whereas if you have a fleet of buses that only operate between the commuter hours of 7 to 7, you have 12 hours overnight to charge. You can take a slow charge. So understanding those operational constraints on both the vehicle and on your fleet itself will make all the difference. We cannot build Stéphane's fleet at Videotron around the needs of the charger or the vehicle. The business operation itself has to come first. If they're not out laying down telephone lines and connecting internet, connecting my router, then what's the point in electrifying if the fleet doesn't work, right? The main benefit of electric is that it is basically just like a gasoline fleet, only cheaper to operate. So you need to have that discussion up front with a specialist to plan your infrastructure first. That's the biggest concern, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'd like us to talk about a little bit more on about power management technologies. You all touched on it a little bit. By that we mean a technology that allow you to schedule optimal charging periods to avoid peak demand charges. And you've touched on it, and it's really became a prominent topic of discussion among EV charging experts, because it's a very important component of transitioning to an EV fleet and operating an EV fleet. And it's really it's a very important component because it really makes the difference sometimes in terms of cost. Sylvain and perhaps Christopher, can you comment on these technologies and the role they play in electrifying a fleet? Stéphane, do you employ any of these technologies right now at Videotron? Maybe we can start with you, Sylvain.
Yeah. For sure, these power management technologies can really make a big difference. At Flow, we've been providing, helping the Quebec government electrify its fleet, and we've had a long relationship with the Société Québécoise des Infrastructures, the Quebec Society for Infrastructure, roughly translated, and we have hundreds of charging stations that have been installed as part of that relationship. And they have observed significant savings thanks to these power limiting and power sharing technologies. In fact, based on the data that we have access to, we believe that the application of these software can generate up to 45% of savings in terms of on the energy consumption front. So that's substantial. It's not something that you can overlook.
Absolutely, it's very, it's not marginal. Christopher?
Yeah, so Sylvain really hit the nail on the head with this one. Savings are derived from power management. It's just that simple. And there's two principal ways you can save here. There's an actual software component. Flow has a great program on this one. So do a lot of other charger manufacturers as well. Basically, every single charger you buy is going to have a SIM card in it. It's going to get connected to the cloud, and all sorts of witchcraft happens where it's super smart. You can control it from your phone, and you can basically flick it on and off and dim it back down. Now, as I said earlier, if you have an overnight fleet, this is a gold mine that you're sitting on, because you can just type in how many hours you have when you want the bus ready, and the software figures it out for you, make sure the bus is powered, but doesn't spike your demand charges. There's also a physical side to this as well, and that's the hardware components that you can do. And Flow does this as well, where you can like daisy chain your chargers together to prevent them from having, to prevent a series of, say, 5 or 6 of them from ever reaching maximum capacity. They'll start to share the power between them. It's really great if you have overnight charging. But there's also the physical component of, what if you need max power all the time? You're in that capacity constrained area, or you're in that time crunch, or you have a fleet that always needs to be ready to move and needs to be responsive. And that's where ancillary power can come from. Rather than continually drawing from the grid and getting a big bill from, BC Hydro or Hydro Ottawa or Hydro Quebec or Energy New Brunswick or whatever, you can consider alternative energy sources as well. Battery storage, wind power, solar power, especially for some of our customers in California and in the southern United States. Even in Canada, Lion Energy finds itself talking about alternative energy and renewable energy as an ancillary power source to the grid more and more. And that's something that I think is the other side of power management and utility demand management that right now is sort of an unknown and is something the market is kind of fumbling through.
Stefan, do you use power management technologies at Videotron?
Yeah, we since we bought Flow charging station level 2 and level 3, we do manage our sharing charging station, but also the software that gives us the opportunity to avoid the peak during the evening and the night. But what we're looking towards the company as Flow or Telemetrics, that they can work together and says that if a vehicle doesn't need to be recharged during the night, that it won't be recharged, and all the power will be used on charging a vehicle that needs to be on the road the next day. So I think in the future we will see more companies that will work together with Flow and our Telemetric company. I know that we spoke together to see what it can be done in that way, and also will with all the roads that has to be made during the night. So if for example, if a vehicle only needs an autonomy for 30 kilometers during the next day, why does this vehicle has to be fully charged during the night instead of a vehicle that needs 80 kilometers regarding its road that has to be done the next day? So I think in the future we will see some ANI in charging with telematics and everything. So yeah, we do manage actually, but I think it's need to be more than charging sharing charging or manage the peak during a day. But yes, we do use those kind of options in our charging.
Okay. I do have one last question for you. I know that we have some questions also from the audience, and we have 14 minutes to go. So let's go with. I'd like to talk about the analytics a little bit. what role do analytics and insights play in your ability to measure the success of your fleet? What metrics do you track, and what tools do you use to track them? And perhaps why are you collecting all that data, and are you taking time and resources to analyze it? What does it bring? What benefits do you see? Maybe this seems more relevant to you, Stéphane, because you might be experiencing it right now, but also Sylvain and Christopher, you might have thoughts on it as well. So let's start with Stéphane.
This project will make it possible to understand the technical and operational issues surrounding electric vehicle fleet, and to gather information related to their deployment. This will also allow a small-scale assessment of recharging in a fleet of vehicles under real conditions, and to make stock of learning in order to better guide the future development of electrification in this regard. So, on more technical level, the project will also document the use and various impact of recharging in the context of fleet of electric vehicles, such as energy consumption, power calls, energy management, by considering all the activities of the organization, the availability of electric vehicle, operational changes that we might live during this project. So this is about an example of what we want to measure during this project, and to make sure that it's going to be a success for this, and to apply this project to our plan that will goes for the next years.
Sylvain?
Yeah, you know, we've alluded to the relevance and the of doing pilots as people start their transition. Well, to make the best learnings out of these pilots, you actually need to measure, and you need to have a pretty good assessment and good data to inform your future decisions. So clearly, analytics it plays a very, very important role in this. At Flow, we've developed our own proprietary analytics dashboard. It's called SmartView. Which we share with our clients, and it will show, you know, it will monitor the key performance indicators for their charging operations. So, you know, how many charging sessions, what's the energy that's been transferred, how many sessions, emissions reductions, and so on. You know, one thing that we haven't talked really about, but that is fundamental in a fleet setting, is actually reliability. Is your fleet able to charge 100% of the time? Because if there's a failure at one of the chargers, it can impact your operations for the following day. So having, you know, the ability to monitor the network, to identify what are the problems, and to solve them quickly is also something that we will track, and that will make sure that it's available in a transparent fashion with our clients.
Christopher?
Yeah, so Lion, I think Lion here is in a really good position to talk about this and the data we measure. We have over 10 million kilometers driven on our electric vehicles across all these different vehicle classes in the heavy duty sector. And we actually offer our own onboard telematics system called Lion Beats that we offer to our customers, where we'll track everything from electricity consumption, state of charge, battery health, battery degradation, you name it, we're doing it. And what we're using this data for is to better inform how our electric vehicles are designed and deployed, but we're also using it to better inform why electricity infrastructure should be the critical focal turning point around what these discussions center around. And that goes back to what Sylvain was just saying. Are your vehicles going to be ready the next morning at 100%? Are there going to be ways with which you only need an 80% charge? How do we better size your vehicles? How do we better size your charging infrastructure to both save money but ensure that your vehicles are operating at 100% efficiency? to follow that up, that's where telematics onboard the vehicle, but also where software at your chargers can make a difference as well. Understanding how much electricity you're using, why you're using it, how you're using it, and most importantly, when you are using it, can help you avoid things like utility demand charges, but also let you gain a better insight into your fleet, how it's performing and why. It can also have tangential benefits, like teaching your drivers how to be eco-friendly drivers, getting more out of their regenerative braking to extend the vehicle range of your state of charge. That also has a benefit of slowing your drivers down and making them more cautious. So there are those tangential benefits as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much to the three of you. So we have 8 minutes left and a few questions from the audience. So I'll start with one from Eric, and I think it is for Sylvain. And it goes like this. You talk about overnight charging. How sensitive are your charging stations to environmental conditions? For example, freezing temperatures overnight. Also, what about salt air on the coast?
Yep, this is a very good and relevant questions. We're, at least in terms of weather, we're really fortunate to be based out of Quebec City, where we see during a year tremendous variations. We get the super cold, and then we get also some fairly hot weather in the summer. We've always been, I think it's in our DNA, sensitive and aware of the needs to have chargers that were, able to withstand all the challenges that the weather would bring. This is also why we're really fond of using aluminum for our charging stations. So our charging stations are built out of aluminum, and this makes them particularly durable. So they're certified to operate at -40 and +50 Celsius. And when it comes to salty conditions, we've had experience on the coast. And our chargers are considered to be extremely reliable as well in those conditions.
Excellent. When you're invented and tested in Quebec, you can probably make it anywhere. Because we have such a hostile and extreme conditions. Okay, another question from Tammy. I think it might be for Stefan or Christopher. It goes like this. Can you discuss the difference across types of vehicles? Cars, SUVs, larger chassis trucks, in terms of economics, ROI, incremental capital costs, etc. Where should a diverse fleet start generally? Stefan, what do you think? Where did you start?
First of all, you have to know the kind of vehicle that you need. It's the most important because actually from now for Videotron, the class 2 vehicles are not made by OEM manufacturers at this point. So you're going to go rather than with the Nissan Leaf, Mitsubishi Outlander, PHEV, or EVs vehicles that are already in the market. So if you want to accelerate your electrification, you might go on to convert some vehicles. So we do manage to convert Econoline 150s and Econoline 450s. To try to see right now at this point to electrify as fast as we can and to experience a fully electric vehicle.
Oh, I think we've lost Stefan. So we're gonna go. Oh, you're back. Go ahead.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah,
we
I'm
lost
back.
you for a
sorry.
second.
Yeah, it's not
So you
unstable.
were saying?
Yeah, I don't know where I was when you lost me, but the main thing is to make sure that the average kilometers per day with your vehicles will be underneath the autonomy of the vehicle. So if like us, and why we choose Frontenac, it's because 95% of our vehicle at this location were doing less than 50 kilometers per day.
Mm-hmm.
So when we choose to buy a few vehicles in like Nissan Leaf, or we convert a few Econoline, that where it's the displays that we know that with an autonomy of 160 or 180 kilometers, that a vehicle will last for a day or two in our case. So choose the right vehicles, but make sure in your project you're going to analyze the average mileage that you're going to do per day to make sure that you won't be stopped by the autonomy of the vehicle.
Okay, thank you. And last question for Christopher from Matt, and that will be our last question. So we have 3 minutes left. What is the most important part a fleet operator needs to understand when electrifying a fleet? Is the biggest challenge the charging infrastructure for a 100% electric fleet, according to you?
Yes, without a doubt. It's the same way I would say that the hardest part of creating a gasoline fleet without gas stations in a 100-kilometer radius would be the infrastructure. If you do not have adequate infrastructure, or you do not own it, or you're sharing it with the public, and you don't have control over it, you cannot guarantee the actual service that your vehicles will perform. And understanding that they are there to drive a return on investment and to provide a service in a fleet, that is critical. So getting the infrastructure component right from the get-go is probably the most important discussion you can have. And that's why it's important to understand what vehicles you're going to be buying, what use case they're going to be doing, how long you're going to be using them for, and what routes they'll be covering, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. You should be planning for the future as you buy these vehicles. They do have a long lifespan. And you need to size that infrastructure accordingly and plan for it in your operations. It is cheaper to operate an electric vehicle. That does not mean that there are not expenses, and minimizing those expenses is absolutely critical.
Thank you. This hour flew by really fast. So thank you to our panelists, all of you, and also to our audience, you, the participants, for your time. Today's discussion is just one of the series of conversations that Flo is hosting on EV charging and sustainable infrastructure. And if you like what you've heard, you can tune into their social media channels and stay in the loop about what we'll be speaking on next. So thank you again to you all, and have a great afternoon if you're on the East Coast, and rest of the day otherwise. Thank you very much.